Welcome to They Live by Film, a platform dedicated to bringing you film discussion and interviews from around the world. I am Adam Lundy, and I'm joined by my co-hosts Chris Haskell and Zach Bryant. Hello, guys.
Hello,
Hello.
hello.
How's everybody?
Oh, just getting ready for the wonderful week of work I'm about to experience.
Mm,
Like this is a weekly occurrence now. What is it? Is this the third week in a row that we're talking?
it is indeed
Yeah,
third
yeah,
week, third
yeah.
week in a
Wow,
row.
so lucky.
Before
Now,
we get into these delicious films that we're going to speak about today, anyone have anything that they watched during the week? I know we only spoke last week, so might not have as much to talk about as we do in normal episodes, but anyone watch anything or pick up anything during the week?
Well, I've been working on this kind of thing on Letterboxd, where I decided for some reason that I was going to rank every slasher movie I've seen since 2021, and then realized there was 150 of those. So I was like, "Oh, this is going to be fun." So,
wow,
I bet,
that's awesome.
yeah, I'm at 152 right now, I think. Yeah. So I've mostly been watching that. Like I rewatched House of Wax and Urban Legend, which were like ones I watched on VHS as a kid, maybe like from the DVD store or something back when we had movie galleries. So that's mostly what I've been kind of getting into, and I'm not watching much else besides that.
Yeah,
Are there any films that you haven't seen in a while that like surprised you in terms of like
Uh,
either being like better or worse than you remembered?
I would say both Urban Legend and House of Wax were like that. Like I kind of put them off for years because they were just movies I saw as a kid, and I was like, I'm sure they're not that great. Honestly, they're both pretty cool movies, especially like House of Wax, which is more of a, in my opinion, more of a remake of Tourist Trap than it is of like Andre Dessous House of Wax. But still, a really like cool movie. A lot of cool sets. Like the whole House of Wax building is like made out of wax, so you get like a really cool like set piece towards the end. And of course, it's the era of like '90s teens, so you have like Chad Michael Murray in it, and you have like Joshua Jackson in these movies and stuff like that, which is just kind of its own era, I guess, which is kind of, I guess I've gotten a little nostalgic for as I've gotten older, and I hated when I was younger. But yeah, it's actually been kind of fun going back to these '90s and 2000s movies.
there was I was listening to a podcast where they were talking about Blumhouse movies,
Mm-hmm.
and there was one I wanted to ask you about because it was oh yeah, Insidious. How is 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 Insidious a slasher?
No, it's much more of like a poltergeist type of movie. Now, does it have
Mm,
like you look at like Insidious 2, it plays into like some of those. One kind of plays with like what I would say unconventional slashers. Like I count Saw series as a slasher series, because I think it falls enough into the definition to work. And then I think Malignant works pretty well as a slasher film, though it's also kind of unconventional as one. But yeah, I think that's more of what his interests are. So we have things like Insidious 2, which he directed, which I think he plays a little bit more with that, but not, it's mostly a poltergeist thing.
okay, gotcha. That's cool. I'd love to see that list. I think you've shared it even, right? I need to go
Yeah,
through it.
yeah. So you can see as the bottom when you start getting into Jeepers Creepers Reborn, and let's see. Oh yeah, I watched what did I watch last night? Oh, the remake of Nightmare on Elm Street, which is still absolute garbage. Like I was like, maybe if I go in with an open mind, it'll be better, now that it's been so long. And I'm like, no, this movie still sucks. So what about you
Um,
guys? What have you been watching?
I can be quick because I just want to call out. I finally got around to the movie from last year from Damien Chazelle called Babylon.
Oh, such a good movie. That was my number two last year.
Babylon slaps.
Yeah.
How does this movie have hate?
I don't know. It's so
Like,
weird. I could not believe it when I watched it. I was like, everyone's shitting on this movie. It's so good.
did yeah, like, did people just not like movies? Like, the movie is awesome. Okay, like you know, 30 minutes in, it flashes the title of the film, right? So there's like a 30-minute opening sequence, right? And that
Mhm.
30-minute opening sequence is amazing. It's like the whole scene at the party, the opening party,
Yeah, yeah.
just
Yeah.
so good. Like I, it's I'm speechless of how there's any hate at all directed towards this movie.
See, I thought you were going to hate it because at the end he decides not to flash, like when he's talking about the greatness of cinema. He doesn't just flash one James Cameron movie; he flashes two.
Well, I won't besmirch a guy for mediocre taste. But I no, I like actually the whole like love language to cinema kind of ending I thought was maybe a little cheesy, but the movie as a whole is just so good. Like I really I don't it did not feel like a 3 hour movie at all.
And I think
Um
it's because it's, I don't want to call it cynical, but in a sense, like, I compare it a lot to like Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, where that's much more of a gracious love letter to the golden age of Hollywood and things like that, where
mhm.
it's taken a very rose-colored tint where Chazelle, where I think he's younger and he hasn't had as many movies and he's kind of got a pretty fresh take on what Hollywood's like, is very cynical about it. Like I think he is cynical about the process of Hollywood. And I think that may turn people off because it is pretty close after like the greatness of Golden Age Hollywood with Once Upon a Time. But I love both movies, but they definitely have different worldviews of it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mhm.
Um yeah, I guess maybe if you're not interested in the politics of it or like the points he's trying to make, maybe there'd be a reason not to like it. But I was just that's just it's dumb not to like that movie. I'm sorry.
Yeah. That's so good.
It's so good.
I love the whole sequence with Tobey Maguire's character. That
Oh,
Oh,
was
that's
ins-
just
that
wild.
so good.
just
So
so
good.
evil. Like he's a fever dream.
Yeah, for sure.
Um or a nightmare, I should say. Uh the only other thing worth calling out is I got the Ruben Östlund set in. So from Curzon, so now I have the three of their sets. Um, and I went ahead and ordered Lars von Trier from them, so I'll have the four sets they've put out. And it just kind of hit me like, well, first of all, I'm a little bit annoyed because they're all different sizes and shapes. So
Oh, it's the
keeping them on,
Criterion way of box sets.
yeah, basically. But they've done a good job of differentiating themselves. Like they have a particular, they all have one particular type of paper, cardboard, sort of box that has like a little bit of a, um, I don't even really know what kind of like the feel of it is, but it's a very unique feel. Um, and the kind of muted colors, like if you're a painting, I guess it'd be like matte paint instead of glossy. So they have that kind of matte look, which is a favorite of mine. I love colors in that matte look. Um, yeah, they're just doing a good job with the packaging and making it look nice and doing, relatively complete collections of these directors. So I'm sure there's going to be something to complain about as I go through them, but just strictly from the having them on the shelf perspective, I'm glad to be collecting these.
I just don't like that you said it was their fourth release. You're part of the propaganda, the Curzon propaganda of erasing their 20 years of sinning against movie collectors.
Wait,
Uh,
Artificial Eye was the heathen, right?
yeah, but that's the same people.
No, I know. I'm just saying, but it's like Kia is trying to have like they're trying to upgrade, right?
That's
Like,
the problem. It's erasing. This is artificial eye erasure right now.
See,
What you're doing.
see, Adam respects Kino because Kino has a bad history, but they've gotten better but kept their name.
Yeah, exactly.
mm,
That's what they should be doing. Not hiding behind new brands.
the damage was irreparable, okay?
um,
But that's it for me. What about you, Adam?
yeah, I don't have much. I had a super busy week, so the only film I watched this week, since we last spoke, anyway, apart from the two we're gonna talk about today, was the one for the film club, the Cinderella movie, which I don't really have much to say on, so I'm gonna move past that. The only thing I do want to kind of give a shout out to is that Criterion are finally coming back to Region B. They've been away from Region B for a couple of months because they were changing distributor. Sony were
Uh,
distributing in Region B since they came over, and it's changed hands. I can't remember the name of the company that's going to be distributing from them, but they're going to be starting to release new titles in Region B now from October. The first two are going to be After Hours, which I'm really looking forward to, because we're also releasing the 4K, which is the first time 4K is being sold by Criterion in Region B. So super looking forward to that. And then they're also releasing that Todd Browning set that has Freaks and those other two films in it.
so good.
Um, so yeah, more Criterion's coming to Region B from October, which is cool because I was getting worried for a while that they were just moving out of the market altogether, and because they hadn't released any sort of updates officially. Because Region B kind of just get tossed to the side. We don't get announcement posts on socials or anything like that. There's a page that you have to go search for on their website that I have bookmarked because it's hidden so deeply on the Criterion website, and they just update that every month at one point
Yeah.
without doing any proper announcements. But they haven't updated that in like 6 months, so there was worry that nothing was going to be coming out. But then release came out through a few social channels that are involved in film that have announced this kind of on their behalf. So looking forward to that in October anyway, because I really want to see After Hours after everybody has hyped it up so much in the past few years to it being like this fucking God-sent film. So I'm looking
It
forward
is
to
my
actually
favorite
seeing it.
Scorsese, if that helps. I was worried about the hype too, but it's probably my favorite Scorsese now.
Yeah, I look forward to finally seeing it. So I'm gonna avoid trying to watch it elsewhere. I'm gonna wait till the 4K comes out and watch it on that.
Yeah. It's good. Bringing out the Dead, um, I like a little bit better in terms of under discussed Scorsese movies.
Yeah, that's my number two. Those are my top two right now.
Okay, yeah,
I love
but
Breaking Out the Dead's great.
yeah, it's so good. But After Hours is still really good for sure. Yeah, we're talking about good movies. There's a good one in this bunch.
Some would argue too. Zach, do you want to tell us again what we're going to be talking about today?
All right, so first movie we're going to be discussing today is the first film from Matthew Bright. I think it was his first film. I think he only made four, which is his 1996 movie Freeway, which is a twisted take on Little Red Riding Hood, a teenage juvenile delinquent on the run from a social worker traveling to her grandmother's house and being hounded by a charming but sadistic serial killer and pedophile. So I guess, Chris, we're gonna to me these are both very underappreciated. I kind of want to see where they rank on these lists, if they even rank. So what are our lists saying they're located at?
Yeah, sure. So you want me to start with Freeway?
Yeah, we'll get to Running Scared when we get to that one.
I was really, really, really disappointed in They Shoot Pictures for this. It's on the list, but it's 17,566.
Jesus.
It's bad.
Yeah, that's what is that around? Like, what is even in the 17,000s?
Um, okay. So you've got, I mean, I am curious, Blue, um, Little Joe from a couple years back.
Never heard of
Who's
it.
that? Scorsese's Who's That Knocking on My Door?
So bottom tier Scorsese's around it. Okay.
Contraband from Michael Powell, which I haven't even heard of that, to be honest.
Oh.
A Ken Russell movie called Salome's Last Dance. So this is like lesser known titles from well-known directors. And I'm thinking, I mean, to show it's not this is totally like a consolation prize kind of answer, but to show up on this list at all says something because, I mean, it's 13,000 lists of best films, right? So it's this is, it's getting some love. I just don't
Somewhere
understand.
out there, this is somebody's favorite movie.
Yeah, exactly. I just don't get why it's not getting more love. Like, I guess I don't want to spoil it too much, but 17,000 just, I mean, I was sure this was going to be in the top 5,000 at least, if not 2,500. But
I had a feeling because I think it's really gotten more love in the last little bit just since Vinegar Syndrome put out their 4K. I think that's brought a lot of new eyes on it. And the sad thing with Matthew Bright is he had that movie Tiptoes, which apparently he got screwed out of. And that was pretty much the end of his career. So he was kind of hitting some decent like cult pictures for a while. Then 2003, which is like 7 years after his first film Freeway comes out. And that's it. That's the last thing he ever does. And for anyone who doesn't know, Tiptoes is the movie where Gary Oldman plays a midget and his brother is Matthew McConaughey.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
But apparently he got screwed out of his edit, and it's from what everyone says, it's a better movie than what was ever shown. Who knows? But that is apparently how his career ended.
Wait, what? Matthew, Gary Oldman plays a little person and Matthew McConaughey plays his regular sized brother.
Yes,
Yeah,
That's a movie?
that's a
yeah.
movie. A man is reluctant to tell his fiance that his parents, uncle, and brother are dwarfs. I'm sorry, they were dwarfs. I apologize. I got the wrong terminology there. But yes, Gary Oldman plays dwarf in that one.
What a weird movie to make. Why wouldn't you just use a little person as an actor there? Why
Like
get Gary?
Peter Dinklage exists. I know there's other dwarf actors out there, but like Peter Dinklage is like an incredible actor. I just go hire him.
Why would you put
Though
Gary?
there is a whole thing where a lot of people in the little person community are blaming Dinklage for their lack of getting roles because he's made he doesn't
Hoovers
want
them
to be
all up.
stereotyped. Yeah, he's like because um what was it, the Snow White movie that's coming out that looks absolutely terrible. They are not doing little people for that one, and the people who are dwarves in the community are kind of like pissed about it because they said that's our job's gone. And then you have Hugh Jackman. I think it's a Hugh Jackman playing the Oompa Loompa in the Willy Wonka movie.
I have no idea. I know nothing about
Yeah,
that
like
movie.
yeah. So there's like all these roles that are not going to them because according to them, it's a lot to do with Peter Dinklage and his outspokenness about it. They say, well, there goes our jobs. So it's kind of an interesting thing to kind of watch now because it is kind of a thing that's been a problem for a while, but there isn't a right answer.
I'm gonna have to go watch a trailer for this movie. I can't believe something like this exists. What a weird movie. So this is
Yeah,
the one that
yeah.
ended his career.
Pretty much, yeah, because he only made 4 movies. He made the 2 Freeway movies. He made that Ted Bundy movie, which is an okay movie. Like it's fine.
Yeah.
And then he made Tiptoes. And that was it for his directorial career. But we should
Huh.
probably talk about what I think is the best one in his career. We can talk about Freeway.
Yeah.
So let's see. So Chris, you said you liked it, so I guess we'll go to Adam since we know the placing. What do you think of Freeway?
Yeah, I thought it was awesome. I had a great time. Reese Witherspoon fucking kills it.
It's her
She
best role to me.
she was so good. I think she's like underrated anyway. I think she's she did a lot of like rom-coms in the early 2000s. And so she kind of fell into that. The way sort of mainstream media looks at certain actors and they're like, yeah, they're good for like, for rom-coms and lighter roles and such. But I think she's a really, really good actress. She was phenomenal in this. She was able to play, the good, the bad, and the ugly in terms of, the different kind of turns her character takes and stuff. Thought she was fantastic. Kiefer Sutherland was good also. Very hammy role. For a dude that I'm used to being so serious, like I know Kiefer Sutherland primarily through 24. I watched 24 religiously growing up. That was like one of my favorite series. So that's primarily where I know Kiefer Sutherland from. And it's a very serious role that he plays. And this one is, it's just a serious, he's a murderer and pedophile, whatever. But he's also very hammy. Which I think plays in, and I didn't really realize this was a theme between these two movies with the fairy tale stuff. It does kind of play into this kind of wider idea that it's retelling the story of Little Red Riding Hood, that he would be this big wolf character. But yeah, overall, I had a really good time. I thought it was a fun movie. It went in directions I wasn't expecting it to go. It had like some twists throughout, which is kind of good. It wasn't like a very sort of straight story of Little Red Riding Hood. It did have some twists throughout. But ultimately, yeah, as I said, had a really good time, had a blast.
For people who listen who may not know, what Kiefer Sutherland does in this movie is what my job is. He plays like this therapeutic mentor type who works with kids. That's exactly what I do. So it's very creepy to hear someone you know is going to be like an evil pedophile describe your job to you on film. It's a little disturbing.
I bet.
But no, and that was one of the things I ended up loving about the movie. Is one of the things that I find really working with kids, especially juvenile delinquent kids, for as long as I have. Like there are so many movies where I don't feel like they really get how to portray that character. And you know, you mentioned Adam, you mentioned Reese Witherspoon. I think she's the closest I've ever seen to how kids in that, I don't want to say lifestyle, but who have had like that hardship and are kind of put in this situation to raise themselves kind of act, especially when they're as young as they are.
Mm. Yeah, like I don't want to move too much on from Reese Witherspoon for just a second, since we brought that up first. Y'all, like this is not just like a good performance. Like she's amazing in this. Like I think she should have been like up for running for Best Actress kind of good in this.
I mean, I
Like,
definitely think it's easily the best role she ever had in her career, which I think she's great in Legally Blonde too. But
what's the one people always like her in Election? Is that right? That's the one that people always quote.
Yeah,
I've never seen
Election,
that
the
movie.
Alexander Payne movie. I haven't seen it either, to be honest. I know her
Yeah.
also from Legally Blonde. But she's
Yeah.
great in Big Little Lies, that TV series from HBO a few years ago. She's really good in that too.
Yeah, that's true. She is very good in that. I was surprisingly hooked in that show. Um, but she owns this. Like she's asked to do some big things as far as this is her debut role. And she reminds me a little bit of the movie that we saw. Um, sorry, I'm blanking a little bit. The one um, that we were talking about where it's a newer film and it's a house invasion movie. Um,
I'm assuming not Your Next. We talked about that last
you're
week.
next. You're next.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, thank you. It reminds me a little bit of You're Next. In the way that she's asked to be this like, kind of larger than life heroine on screen, but the difference between what that actor is asked to do and what Reese Witherspoon do is like it's like it's a chasm wide between the two. Like she's asked to sort of be vulnerable, but also highly aggressive and feisty, and then sort of just like lose her mind. Um, and she's God, like I loved her in this movie. I was just watching this. I've never seen a side of her like this before. Like I know she's a pretty good actor, but I've just never seen a side of this like this before.
Yeah, and I think you know that range of emotions is something that I think is important, like for the age. I'm not 100% sure. I don't know if they say in the movie what age she's supposed to be, but I mean, I feel like she's like at most 15 or 16 years old is what she's supposed to be playing. I don't know if they say at the beginning
Yeah.
how old she actually is.
No, 16 is
And
about what I got as well. Yeah, 16. I don't know.
that
Again,
is
I
like,
don't know if it was said, but yeah.
yeah, I mean, the cops could have said it at the beginning when, for anyone curious, anyone's followed along, they arrest her parents at the very beginning of the film. So she's supposed to go into foster care, which is something I also work in, is very common, is watching parents get arrested and put into foster care. And I think that's what this movie does like so well, is it's taking like this such a dark idea and a dark premise and still making it fun, like in its own way. I guess that is like how the fairy tale thing works. Like you're taking these dark subject matters and not, this is not a kids movie, but making it almost like an over the top story to make it, you know, for people to actually enjoy it and not just be down in the dumps of how depressing this is.
Oh, that's a really good point, actually. Yeah, that's right. This mirrors what a fairy tale does very well. You're right. Um, because also I kind of want to talk about Matthew Bright. We can do it later. but that guy balances humor and the macabre pretty well. That's one thing he does very well.
Yeah, I
Um,
think that's, with his like three other films that we haven't talked, the Freeway 2 and Ted Bundy, is he's dealing with like super dark material.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, I do want to get into Freeway 2 in just a minute because I watched it just out of curiosity. But um I mean the premise to this one is pretty simple, right? Um she's not what's her name in this movie? It's not Red or anything like that. Is there a kind of a
It's
tie?
it's Vanessa.
Okay, yeah, that's right. But um the wolf, his name is like Don
Wolverton.
Wolferton,
Yeah,
right?
Bob
Bob
Wolverton.
Wolferton. Yeah.
I'm sorry, Bob Wolferton. Yeah. Keith, yeah. So basically she's trying to run away from the foster care system and she gets in a car with Bob Wolferton, who's a sociopath. We don't know that at first. And she's trying to get to her grandma's house so that she doesn't have to go into foster care. That's the basic premise of the movie, right? Pretty
Mhm.
straightforward.
Yep.
And
Yeah.
there's not, yeah, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say, yeah. I mean, it's following the beats of a fairy tale without. Probably one of the criticisms I have towards the end is I think it gets married to the fairy tale idea a little too hard, and it feels a little contrived at the very end. I still think the movie's great, but I was like, before I was like, it was kind of playing a little loose with it, and I thought that was like a lot better for the story. And then it's like, well, we've got to have the Little Red Riding Hood ending, so we're going to kind of force that in a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah, I can kind of see that. But I don't know. But by that point, I was just having so much fun with this, and that final scene is so it's so wild. Um, she just kind of slowly comes unhinged as the movie goes along, right? This is the thing, like she's so powerful in this role. Um, like to me, I'm so glad Vinegar Syndrome put this out, and we're talking about it. Like this is one of those movies that people are going to continue to discover and be like just stunned that they haven't seen or they haven't heard people talk about it more because it just the energy is high. It's very interesting. I don't think it's cheesy. Maybe the ending is a little bit, but like I don't think it's cheesy with the fairy tale. I think he does a good job of modernizing it. Like I don't know. I really love this movie. Like I'm debating
Yeah.
if it's a 5 star for me, but I have to figure it out. But I really liked it.
One part about that I really enjoyed was when she was trying to prove to the police that, and this is not a spoiler, this happens like this is like the main sort of chunk of the film. But when she's basically trying to prove to the police that he's a murderer and he was gonna like murder her and whatever. Um in a lot of other movies, you'd have like this would be sort of like really tense and the victim would be like pleading their case and everything. But like she's just like so the opposite direction, laughing at him in the courtroom and insulting him
Yes.
across the courtroom and stuff. I thought that was absolutely brilliant. I got such a big laugh out of those scenes, when she was just like shouting the most terrible things across the courtroom at him when he's sitting there with his wife. I just thought that was hilarious, and that was a really really good direction to go. Because you mentioned earlier that the director Matthew Bright does a really good job of balancing the tones in this film, and that's an area where things could have got really serious for a long time, but allowing Reese Witherspoon's character to kind of have these sort of comedic moments in an area that's normally super tense and serious, it really helped that sort of balance flow throughout the movie rather than it just sort of cropping up every now and again. It kind of kept that tone balance the whole way through.
Yeah, and like for see, a lot of this is going to be because I've experienced this, but I've watched kids have like outbursts like this in a court, and while you can sit there and say, "Oh, that's sad," they usually do say something pretty funny. Like that's the thing about kids; they have no sense of what they should or shouldn't say, especially if they've kind of had a rough life. So they'll just say the wildest things, and it's like, Jesus, they're lawyers right there. He should really be not letting them do this. But it is funny. It's the only enjoyment you get when you have to sit in court for hours.
What is the whole critique about, you kind of alluded to this, Zach. What's the whole critique about this being like a white trash movie or something? Because I feel like that's a very lazy critique.
I mean, I guess in a sense, like it white trash is just kind of one of those things where she's poor. Her parents are trashy people, so it gets that. And I mean, it has elements of, it's not Rob Zombie. I would never say it's Rob Zombie, but that's just kind of, I guess, how people will describe things where it's dealing with the life of poor people. It becomes white trash. And I think the interesting thing is this is doing, I think, rural California, which, you kind of get a lot in the South where, white trash is in the South. And I was like, no, there's white trash in New York and California too. It's just
Sure.
not around the big cities and stuff. So it's kind of an interesting thing. I wouldn't say I don't critique it for that. I think that, that's an interesting way. And if you're going to deal with kids in the court system, unfortunately, poor kids with a rough home life are going to be your easiest ones to kind of talk about because they sadly have to deal with this quite a bit.
Yeah, no, I wouldn't say it's a critique at all. I mean, I was stunned though. If you go through Letterboxd, people are like making, there's a couple of people that are, or, so I would say more than a couple. There's some reviews that are sort of dogging it for this. And I was just stunned though. Like, I just feel like that's such a lazy thing to say about this movie, just to call out the fact that she's like, from this kind of trashy background or whatever you want to call it. Because like the movie's so much more than that. I don't know. I was just really disappointed in that review.
And and I think it's because people feel like they don't have to feel sympathy for, it's harder to feel sympathy for, which I disagree with, but I've definitely heard that. Um, I went to a Joe Bob Briggs show several years ago where he kind of talked about rednecks in Hollywood. And I'm pretty sure he brought up this movie. I could be wrong. I'd have to go back and watch the show again. But it's like this idea that usually, you look at white trash and that's something that's very much people are okay with making fun of, villainizing and things like that. And, you look at like Deliverance and things or Wrong Turn and things like that.
Mm.
And, so I guess to some people, she's not very sympathetic because of that, even though she absolutely should be. She was never given like a fair shake in life. I mean, you look at her
I,
parents and you realize she had no real choice in life.
yeah, I guess this is kind of my point though. Like just based on her, she should be sympathetic because she is a badass. Like she's you see like the thing that I love so much about this movie is that you see her be put into the worst nightmare of a situation and she doesn't just fight back. Like she dominates. And it's fun to like it's cathartic to see it play out because I just watching this I was feeling like, oh man, I wish this is how it would happen, right?
Well, yeah.
When yeah.
Well, and you look at like the rape revenge genre. It's usually
Mhm.
like a a girl who, not necessarily, she's not a fighter. She wasn't before the events. She became that because of that. And I think the thing that's kind of nice about this, obviously, that doesn't happen in this film, thankfully, because she's so proactive that when she
Yeah.
feels like something's going to go wrong, she attacks. And that's something you don't
Yes.
really see in that type of thing. And it keeps it from ever becoming that because
Right.
she's strong enough to do that.
Yeah.
Because I mean, most
Exactly.
people don't have to go through that in their life, but she's been through it her whole life. They
Yeah,
talk
no.
about the beginning that I don't know if it's her dad or her stepdad, I can't remember, has basically been sleeping with her or molesting her or however
Right.
there's yeah, that whole thing. And so it's something she's dealt with her whole life.
Yeah, stepdad, I think, not that it makes it any better, but
Yeah.
I feel like there was some dialogue early on about how he came into the picture later, but um yeah, I mean this is like I I was thinking about if I would recommend this movie as I was kind of watching it. And at first I was like, I don't know. There's that scene in the when Kiefer Sutherland switches his personality in the car and you see the devil come out like in his eyes and some of the way he talks to her. I was like, oh boy, this is gonna go bad. Um,
Well, it's
but then
like, as someone who's had like this career and he starts like, well, I'm going to ask you some very personal questions and I need you to ask. I'm like, no, 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 no. You don't
mhm.
do that. But I mean,
Hmm.
obviously, he's doing it for nefarious reasons. But you're like, oh, it just makes you cringe. You're just like, oh, here
Well,
it
you wonder where
goes.
it's, yeah, but you wonder where it's going, right? But I think Bright does such a good job of balancing, like creating the terror and sort of setting it up to where she would be assaulted, but then creating her character, which is just such a fighter that she generally comes out on top despite being put in some horrible situations. So, yeah, I just gushing on. I think the writing is good. Um, it's interesting. The editor of the movie was interviewed on the disc.
Hmm.
And she has a strong pedigree. She was an editor for Altman. She edited the Joy Luck Club. She's a professional editor with a lot of really good credits. And she was just gushing about Witherspoon in this because she didn't know her. Like this was an unknown actor at the time. And
And,
yeah, she
and
was
I
just
think she
gushing.
does elevate it. Yeah, I mean, because I think you said you want to talk about Freeway too, which I still like, but they don't have that elevation like Witherspoon in the same degree, and I think it shows sometimes.
Yeah, yeah. But I do real quick. I know. Is there anything else? Because I do want to kind of talk about maybe Freeway 2 and Matthew Bright a little bit. But Adam, is there anything else that we're not saying about Freeway that you want to say?
No, you guys summed it up. We're obviously we gave a lot of praise, rightfully, to Reese Witherspoon and to Kiefer Sutherland, but I think the cast in general were super good. There's some good actors in this movie. Brittany Murphy shows up. I always really like Brittany Murphy and stuff. It's so tragic that she died. I think she's a really really good actress.
Yeah.
Super underrated, I think. So it's always nice when she shows up. Amanda Plummer as well, probably another kind of actress who's underrated. Probably obviously most well known for her scene in Pulp Fiction. But then they have like Brooke Shields randomly in here. Bokeem Woodbine
Hmm.
is in this too. So I think it's just a really really good cast altogether of just talent, like just really good professional actors who came in, knew what they're supposed to do, and they all just kind of knocked it out of the park.
Yeah, I agree. Um, and it's really interesting, I think, to watch Matthew Bright because, Zach, to your point, Freeway 2 goes in a very different direction. Um, although it is a road movie.
It's your Thelma and Louise.
Yeah. And the actual fairy tale they're trying to cover there is Hansel and Gretel, is that right?
Yeah, yeah.
But no, no, no. Your Thelma and Louise is spot on. In a very dark version of that. Um, but he does the same thing there. I think he leans more into the macabre in Freeway 2. Although it still has a lot of humor in it, but I think he creates more nightmarish scenarios in Freeway 2.
I think that to me, I think the reason that is because like in the first film, even though Reese Witherspoon's character is kind of fighting against her own interests with what she does, she's still fighting to have a life. Like, obviously, she doesn't deserve to go to prison. She doesn't deserve this. But then you get these two characters where there isn't really a happy ending for them. Like, they're in prison and they're in there for like some pretty tough stuff. And it's
Yeah.
like, where does this end? Like, realistically, where are they going to end up? Uh,
Well,
and
it was, yeah,
and that's not in no way am I like gonna say Natasha, how do you say her last name, Leon,
Leon.
Leon, yeah,
Yeah.
she's great, and I always liked her as an actress. I've been a fan for her for years, and I think she's good in it. She's not Reese Witherspoon in Freeway good, but she's good. But it's hard to get, it's going to be harder to gain sympathy from these two characters, especially the girl she's with, because I mean, the girl she's with is just straight up murdering people like regularly.
And relishing in it, right?
Yeah, it's like, this isn't I did what I had to do to survive. Like, that's what Reese Witherspoon is. There's, as much as I like them in the movie, they're especially her, she's kind of an evil person. Like, it's like, yeah, she probably does need to be in juvie.
Right. It's funny because I know this is a little bit unfair to say. It's a bit lazy to say, but it really felt, especially with Natasha Lyonne sort of starring in it, it really felt like Orange is the New Black, like kind of a
Mhm.
full-length movie of that.
Unfortunately, because that's so retroactive. I mean, it
Yeah,
sucks, but yeah, it does,
yeah,
especially if you see it after the fact.
yeah. And even some of the characters in Orange is the New Black, I feel like would fit in well here. You know, there's some that are definitely have that they can kind of flip into that killer, that crazy side.
Mhm.
Um, but I've also seen Ted Bundy recently, just by coincidence. I'm going through the Vinegar Syndrome archive line, and it's like 32 or 33 in that line, and that's where I'm up to now. So, you know, it's interesting that you chose this. So I've seen most of Matthew Bright's kind of director credits now.
You just need one more.
I don't know if I'm going to see Tiptoes. That movie sounds pretty weird. I might see it.
It's on Amazon Prime. You don't have to pay $1 for it.
Okay. All right. Maybe then. Um, but you know, even in Ted Bundy, he balances this humor with the macabre, and like I think it's interesting that if I can just call out like one thing in Bright, I think his imagine like he can go pretty dark. He doesn't seem to shy away. You know, he doesn't really just like brush over the macabre. Like he relishes in it, it seems like. So you know, he has some fun with the really dark stuff. And because he has fun with it, the movies don't come off as dark as they should.
Yeah, and I think that's what, makes them like, I mean, if you're going to do a movie on Ted Bundy, and I mean, they've done one semi recently, you're talking about probably one of the most evil men in American history.
Right.
And it's like a lot of people are like, well, let's talk about how evil he is. Where I don't think like Bright's going to talk about it, but it's not going to be in a way that nobody wants to watch it.
Right. Yeah,
Like, I mean, he
exactly.
sets up that movie without. I mean, can I spoil Ted Bundy when I don't think I can. So when you get to the execution scene, in case somebody didn't know, Ted Bundy got executed in Florida. I mean, he does try to have like this sense of like karmic justice when as goofy as the executioner taking her hood off and it just being this girl he probably would have killed if he had had the chance. It's goofy, but it's like it's that attempt to be lighthearted and it tends to have like a sense of justice to it
Right.
versus let's
Yeah.
just see how violently he killed women.
I think the way he does it is um is okay, I'm going to say the word important. Maybe it's the wrong word, but I think it's important because in Ted Bundy, he doesn't make Ted Bundy look like this sort of mm, darkly sort of mysterious sexual killer. Like he makes him look like a goofball and like a sociopath and like and evil, but like not in a way, you know, because there's this whole thing about how a lot of serial killers will have people write love letters to them, like they kind of get infatuated with them,
Yeah,
right?
and Bundy definitely had that.
And right, he kind of had this mystique around him. And the way that I like what Bright does with the Freeway movies and with Ted Bundy is I think the way that he shows the evil, it comes off as very clear that it's evil. It doesn't, there's no confusion in it. Like I like the way that he shows evil in the sense that he doesn't cast kind of a loving gaze on it. Um,
Yeah,
and
especially because I mean, it's one of those things where, when Ted Bundy gets brought up, it gets brought up that he was considered attractive.
mhm,
Um, and that kind of sticks around with him. So it's kind of nice to not focus on that as much.
yeah,
Like, and I get why filmmakers do it. They do it so the women don't seem like they're stupid. Because if you sat there and you go too far into he is obviously a sociopath, then you're kind of making the victims seem dumb when they weren't. They were in a bad situation that he manipulated. But I think he balances that well in Ted Bundy as well, to where they don't feel that way still.
yeah, no, totally. I do as well. Um, I don't know if, I'm just trying to think of I don't really have much else to say. I think it's interesting to see all of Matthew Bright's filmography in a short time. Um, I think Freeway for sure is his best of the three.
I agree.
Um, and in fact, I think the ranking for me just goes in chronological order.
And I'll be honest, it'll probably continue that way if you watch Tiptoes, but that's fine.
Yeah, Freeway 2 is really interesting. There's some scenes in it where they could be pulled straight from a Jodorowsky film. Um, he's very good with the imagery in that movie. I mean, dark imagery, but some of the set pieces that he creates when you get there's a scene in the movie where it becomes sort of like it's obvious that it becomes sort of a torture chamber. I don't want to say too much else. It just they get into a dungeon with some very dark some very dark stuff going on, and um, it has like a very surrealistic vibe to it. So it's interesting to see that he's creative with the visuals. And like I said, he seems to kind of almost relish in showing the evil in a way, which is weird to say because at the same time, I don't think he promotes it as being a good thing or a fun thing. I think he shows it so that you get to see the characters overcome this thing that you want to hate so much, and then he creates very strong female characters, or seems to work with very strong female characters. I don't, he's listed as the writer here. Um, dare we, dare we, going back to Freeway for a second, dare we make a judgment on whether or not he writes women well? I, three
I
men
mean,
talking about it.
from what I can tell, I think he does pretty good. I mean, I've definitely read worse, a whole lot worse.
Yeah.
And I mean, I feel like, but even though I mostly work with men and boys in my job, I mean, I've been around a lot of female juveniles and women juveniles or young girls and things like that. And I mean, I've seen the way Reese Witherspoon acts in my own life, so it feels very true to life, and it was one of the reasons I liked it so much. All right, we'll keep the fairy tale train rolling, and we're going to run into a movie that came out 10 years after um, Freeway did, the 2006 film Running Scared. A low-ranking thug is entrusted by his boss to dispose of a gun that killed a corrupt cops, but things spiral out of control when the gun ends up in the wrong hands. Chris has hinted a opinion of his, so I'll go ahead and start with Adam and let him talk about how his feelings on Running Scared.
Sure. So I fully went into this with like low expectations. I fully expected to hate this movie. Just based on the fact that it's a mid 2000s Paul Walker movie. So my expectations were like peak bottom, but that makes no sense. They were all the way at the bottom. And I did hate this movie, for a good bit into it, until very early. There's a scene where a Russian man goes off on being obsessed about John Wayne, and I was like, that's a bit interesting. And from there, I just kind of leaned into it. This is a very chaotic, highly super stylized film, and I generally hate 2000s over stylization of movies. I generally hate it. But I think it suited this film really well. Once I kind of opened my mind and just kind of lent into it a little bit, I actually did start enjoying this movie quite a lot. It was a heck of a lot weirder than I anticipated. I expected this just to be a straight gangster movie. I didn't realize this was the connection between this film and Freeway, that it has, these kind of fairy tale adjacent elements. So I did not expect that at all. I expected this just to be a straight action gangstery type of movie. So once the film got up and running, I had a great time. In terms of like if I had to rank like this film and Freeway, like honestly, they're on like the same level in terms of like level of how well I enjoyed it. Thought it was really fun, really good. The only sort of main criticism that I'll put forward at this point is that it maybe goes along for a little bit too long. I think they could have easily stripped 20 odd minutes out of this film and it would still be, just as good. I think it was a little bit too long for what it was, but overall, I had a fun time.
Yeah, and just before you go, Chris, talking about the ranking, I did want to give like a little bit of background on like how this movie came about through Wayne Kramer, just because I think it's interesting. Kramer got famous initially, sort of. I mean, it's kind of hard because this movie's not really famous, but it did get some Oscar buzz, which was the movie The Cooler, which had Alec Baldwin and William H. Macy in it. It bombed at the box office, but Alec Baldwin ended up getting nominated for an Academy Award. So that kind of put him on the map. And with his next project, he pretty much got a free check to do what he wanted to. Producers told him, make the movie you want to make. And he was able to do that with very little pushback. We'll probably talk about it in a minute, like when we get to that scene about where he did get some pushback on. But he decided to go with this because he was very frustrated in the fact that it felt like a lot of films that would have been focused on being for adults, like Born Supremacy was like, PG-13, and a lot of like things. He's like, well, in the 70s and 80s, these would have been R-rated movies for adults. He wanted to harken back to that. He really wanted a hard R-rated movie that was stylized in this grindhouse kind of modernized effect to make something he thought would be something that he enjoyed back in the day. And it had the same thing where it didn't do well in theaters, but then on home video, it did extremely well. So it just kind of repeated itself. But I'm curious, Chris, where does this rank in compared to Freeway?
Well, yeah, so this is not on the They Shoot Pictures list at all.
That is upsetting.
And
Disgraceful.
I mean, come on, y'all, this movie sucks. I mean, like, okay, it's not fair. It doesn't suck, but like, I agree with the ranking.
I don't like this is like a top like 100 film for me. Like this is in my top 100 for sure.
No way.
Yeah, I adore this film, man. Like I'm
Top
me and my
100?
girlfriend. Yeah, I put this is currently in my top 100.
Okay.
This film is so much fun. How can people hate this movie?
Y'all, it's not good. What like what did we I mean the basic beats of the movie are interesting as far as like, it has the kids and they get into trouble and they're trying to hide a gun, and Paul Walker does Walker things and sort of act poorly and run around.
I think this is like his best acting performance. Like I think he's really good in this.
I think it's pretty good.
Could be his best performance. That fits.
I mean, it's so different. It's so different for him. Like he is somebody who like the whole movie has to act like he's on edge, and he does such a great job with that in the tone of the film. Like it's an over the top film, so he's given an over the top performance, but so is everybody. Like that's like the whole thing with him, and I think he does so well with that. Where he constantly feels like he's in a chaotic state throughout.
Okay. So Zach, you have called me out before for the fact that I seem to like genre films, but then at times I don't seem to like genre films. and I'm feeling like this is another one of those moments.
I'm so surprised you don't like this movie for that exact reason. I'm so surprised that you didn't have it. How can you enjoy something like Action USA and then not have fun with this?
Whoa. Those are fighting words. Because Action USA is one of the greatest movies ever made. Okay, here's just really quick. Y'all are like just Adam, you said you like this the same as Freeway, and then Zach, you're saying this is a top 100 movie for you.
To be fair, both of those films are in top 100 for me, but yeah, it's top 100 for me.
Not like top 100 action movies or top 100 movies with Paul Walker, but like just a general top 100.
Every movie that's ever been made that I have seen, I would put this in my top 100.
All right, then I'll be nice. Because I do respect you both.
Yeah, I mean, go for what you want. I'll graciously defend this film. Do not worry.
There is a movie called Crank that came out.
Yeah, I've seen Crank.
Okay, to me, Crank is, although it's much more chaotic than this, and it's not the same story at all. I think Crank does what this movie was trying to do better.
See, I don't think it's trying to be Crank though. Like I kind of have a hard time feeling that. Like, yeah, they're both chaotic, but I mean, Crank is, I guess, in a sense that it's trying to like one up itself. Its story is incredibly secondary, where this one, the story is, simple as it may be, is pretty much the through line throughout the whole film. Like, Crank is fun because it doesn't really worry about that sort of thing. And it doesn't need to. Where I think Running Scared feels a little bit better because it does worry about that, and I think it does it pretty well throughout.
This is like, okay, I think I can sum it up for me. I didn't like this movie because it felt like a 90-minute or 2 hour or whatever, I think close to 2 hour. It felt like a 2 hour new metal music video. Like
I
it
don't
just
listen
had
to
that.
new metal, so I can't comment on that.
Yeah, I mean, I don't either, but I guess I used to see it just felt like it just felt like it was trying to be like oddly placed machismo, kind of like um using editing and like using just cheap tricks with trying to like zoom in fast on something to try to create energy for no reason. And a lot of the stuff I'm going to describe is also in movies that I like. So I'm trying to think of how to say this in a way that it's stood out. But I would just didn't feel like this was a well-made film. Like I just I couldn't really like the dad. Okay, so the whole thing starts off right. Like Paul Walker is he's like a low-ranking guy in the mafia. There's a shooting that happens and they ask him to hide the gun. So he
Mhm.
brings it home. It just so happens that his son's friend grabs the gun and I mean, there's no spoilers in the first 10 minutes, right? Goes home and shoots his dad, who's an abusive asshole. And
But
then
he likes John Wayne.
and he loves John Wayne, and that's an important plot point.
It is.
The
And
amount of
then
work they did to get that in there, by the way, is ridiculous. Like that was probably the hardest thing for them was to get the Cowboys in this movie and get John Wayne's grandson to sign off that he was okay with this.
from a like a legal perspective, like
Yeah. This was, and like the whole thing with that was, so they got Warner Brothers to say they could use the Cowboys. However, you can still, even if you can use the movie, you can't use John Wayne's likeness. So they were like, okay, how do we do this? So they were like, well, if we send him the script, he's gonna say no because there's so much like the way it's gonna read in the script. So they said, okay, why don't we just film it and we'll show it to him. And they did, and that's eventually how they got it signed off that he was good with it because they had to do that for them to use the Cowboys. That's how much they really wanted to use this whole plot point.
um yeah, I mean, that's a good story. I'm stunned that we're so far off on this. I'm trying to think of if there's uh, maybe if I saw it again, knowing what I kind of know now as far as like the way that it's put together and tone and stuff, I would watch it, but or I would like it more. But I just felt this was like a poorly made movie. Like just not. I was surprised that this was chosen. Like I mean, I'm not trying to critique your choice, but next to Freeway, which is like such a perfectly constructed, like well thought out, clever, well written movie, and this one just felt a little sloppy. So
I would argue that it's that it does all like I completely see why Zach chose to go alongside of it. Um, like when I'm talking about liking these films, I'm talking about from an entertainment standpoint. I would definitely agree that Freeway is probably the better made movie from a technical standpoint because Running Scared does a lot of stuff in movies that I normally hate. All this like that opening scene, with the shootout. I hated this movie during that scene. With all the shit that went on.
yeah, me too.
Um, but like you mentioned stuff about like it being like a Macasmo driven film and stuff, and I actually don't think it is. I think, and this was partially my fault going into it too. Like I expected this to just be a 2000s action movie starring Paul Walker. I didn't expect all of this really cool, interesting sort of Grimm Brothers fairy tale stuff to be going on in the background. And I think when you look at the film through that lens and you look at the kind of character archetypes that are in this film, that stuff really does start to shine. I would watch this film over Crank any day of the week because I actually think there's a lot more depth in something like this than pretty much any other kind of like 2000s straight shooter action or film.
I agree. Yeah, like I mean, there's definitely like I'm not gonna sit here and say it's perfect. It's in my top 100 because it's got such a vibe to it that I do think needed. It has
Yes.
some 2000, it has some 2000isms in it, and it's going to. The editing tricks are going to be very. This was 2 years after Saw, and everybody was doing this fast cut thing. But I mean, I understand why people don't like it, and it's probably Stockholm syndrome on my part. But I've really grown to like and want those kind of things. Like if they make Saw X without it, I'm going to be disappointed because that's like a mark of a 2000s film. But yeah, and I mean, you know, and I guess it helps, you know, I have a different perspective because I know so much of the background of this film, like through the years of watching it. Like, you know, it's weird for me to hear lazy when, you know, I think like one of my favorite shots of the film is like when Paul Walker goes to the guy's house and he's trying to see the perspective of where that bullet went and what happened.
Yeah.
And they show it. That is all done in camera. That's Paul Walker's brother when he's showing it and they're going back. They do all that in camera. And I think that is just so impressive. The only thing they add is the glass breaking. But that the twos where you see Paul Walker twice in the same scene is in camera.
Wow.
And I just think that's super cool. Like that's just something they didn't have to do. And and then
sorry, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, you know, then you see things like the blacklight scene, which is probably to me one of the best scenes in the film. That was the one he got pushback on because it cost $100,000 to blacklight that set. And they were like, is this worth doing that? And I think it's the best sequence in the film. I absolutely think it's worth doing because it's a really cool film, a really cool part of the film. And it actually worked out in their favor because he knew this was going to come back as an NC-17. And he ended up getting an R. And when he asked them about it, they said because of the blacklight scene, the blood looked black.
Okay.
So he got away with that because of something that they paid $100,000 for.
Okay.
But the difference in box office between an R and an NC-17 is a lot more than 100,000.
Yeah,
so
yeah, and I mean, yeah, it's good. He pressured them and says, "Yes, I need this scene in here."
The contrarian in me wants to like this for all the reasons y'all are saying, and I'm very sorry that I can't get there. I'm curious as to, I think, Zach, maybe something you said really just resonated with me. I don't think I do like the Saw movies. I will defend them. That's great entertainment. But I generally don't like that early 2000s kind of whatever Hollywood was doing there. I do find that grating and annoying. So maybe I was affected by that too much. I think there are some very sweet moments. I like the relationship with him and Oleg, the not his son, but the other boy. I think they have some very good moments that are done very well. And I think Oleg is a very well written character for a kid, and he pulls it off well. I will give him a lot of credit there. I think he might have been my favorite actor in the movie, was that kid. I think
and you know, I do think. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Well, I was just gonna say, I think this was a waste of a role for Chaz Palminteri. I don't think he acted the hell out of it. I mean, he was fine in it, but I think his character was written very, very bad.
You'll have to tell me who that is. I don't know who that actor is.
The police, the cop.
Oh, okay, okay.
Just sort of like piecing everything together. With the slick back hair.
Yeah, yeah.
I think he's good. Like, he's a kind of a character actor guy, right? And I think he's fine, but he wasn't given much to work with here. But I think that kid did a really good job. Who's probably an adult by now, right? Because this was made in 26.
2006, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's I would, let's see, how many years ago was that now? That was like
17.
Yeah, 17 years ago.
One scene that he's really good in is when he's in the bathroom of that couple. And he's like on the phone to Vera Farmiga, trying to. It's a really, really good tense scene. And so I had my suspicions about this movie because, again, I didn't read anything about it. I didn't really put together all the fairy tale stuff till towards the end. But there was some moments in this film that were like teeing me off that there was something a little bit surreal about this. Like the scenes where they were all the gangsters were meeting and having their meeting. They're really weird and ungangster like. And they have this kind of low drone music behind, and it really reminded me of the "This Is the Girl" scene from Mulholland Drive.
Yep.
I was like, there's a little bit of Lynch in here. And then when the scene, then when he's locked in the bathroom, and you see that weird like shadow monster figure or whatever the heck it is, and like they never give you more than that. I was like, okay, this film is so much weirder than I thought it was going to be. With that weird sort of shadow monster thing that kind of shows up periodically behind them in the bathroom, but is never questioned ever again, never brought up. You don't really know what that's about. I assume it's metaphorical. But yeah, that's a really, really great scene. And then when I was doing some reading after the movie, I came across a Reddit post about this movie. And people were kind of talking about it. And I saw a comment that said that this movie is like if Quentin Tarantino and David Lynch had a dumpster baby. And I felt so vindicated in my, when I was thinking about, those meeting scenes and how they reminded me of Mulholland Drive. I felt so vindicated afterwards when I read that comment. But yeah, like I said, I think like when I come here and talk about movies and you guys, and just generally how I like score movies, I can't score this movie, in the same way that I would score, some of the art movies that we would watch. Because sometimes like we'll watch a movie and it'll be like technically brilliant, but I may not be the most entertained, but I enjoy it. Whereas with this film, it does everything that I hate technically, but and this is probably where I clash with you the most, Chris. I think this film has so much depth in it, so much heart in it. The writing is really, really good, except for the part that maybe the script could be trimmed down a little bit. But there's so many sort of little cues and little nods to fairy tales, that yeah, I just think it's a really entertaining film, and it has a lot of thought and heart put into it. So even if I don't love how it looks from a technical standpoint, even if it does give me a bit of a migraine, I really appreciate this film, and I had a lot of fun watching it for the most part.
And I agree with like the whole like part of them where he's in the bathroom, and really that whole sequence is like, and when you talk about trimming, you almost sit there and say, is this part really needed? But it is such a good part to like the whole film
Yeah,
of how you bring Vera Farmiga back into it, and like the whole Hansel and Gretel thing. And I was like, it's just a cool scene that is just like we talked about Freeway, where it's such a dark subject matter, but you feel so cathartic by the end of it that you feel a whole lot better by the end of it.
yeah,
And I mean, there's
and
just little things like the code is twinkle twinkle little star and things like that. There's so many like little details in that whole set. Like there's no corners anywhere, so it feels like a maze constantly as he like goes through it. It's just really neat.
yeah, and it has Elizabeth Mitchell, so we all should have known how much that you're going to love this film because it has a Lost actress in it. So
Hey, that helps.
yeah,
Well, I was about to say, when I saw her, I was like, oh yeah, I remember kind of having a crush on her for a year or two when I was going through Lost. Um, but that see, I would have seen a whole movie based on that set piece. I think that was by far my favorite piece of the movie. Like that whole scene, talk about nightmare fuel. It was so brightly colored and sort of sweet, and and I think he did a great job of pulling out that sinister undertone. Um, it was very like it was like chilling, like because of the way that he set it up and executed it. So I love that scene actually. If we're gonna pull out some things that are good about the movie, I also don't really like Vera Farmiga as an actress. I think she's a
Whoa.
beautiful
I
woman,
love that.
but I mean, yeah. I'm trying to think of, I'm just gonna go through and see if there's a movie where she kind of stands out. Um,
The Conjuring. She's good in The Departed.
yeah, yeah, she's fine in The Departed. You're right, I guess. I haven't seen The Conjuring. I need to go see that. Oh, she's like a horror. She does a lot of horror stuff. She's in Godzilla. Okay, okay, fine. So she does a lot of like genre stuff. Yeah, I can kind of see that because she can kind of play big. Like when she gets angry at the end of the movie, when she's rescuing those kids, that was, I think she did a good job there. So I guess I can kind of see it. I just haven't seen her in enough stuff. Oh, she's in all the Conjuring movies. Like,
she's the
She
main
kind of
plays
character.
one
scrolling.
of,
The
yeah, she's
main
one of the
character.
Warrens.
Okay.
So with The Conjuring, watch the first one and then stop,
Okay.
and
I'll
then
say the
Zach will
second
tell you
one.
the opposite.
No, the first two are good. You can stop after that.
The third
But
one
if you
is
do want to
terrible.
go, yeah, and if you the Annabelle movies, skip the first one, watch 2 and 3. They're pretty good. And then you don't have to watch anything else in the Conjuring universe.
I mean, I'm a completionist, so I'm gonna see them all anyways.
Good luck with the first Annabelle and the Nun.
And
The Nun is
Conjuring
not good.
3, which is it's that film no pun intended, conjured the most hate, one of the most hatred out of, hatred, or I've fucked up my sentence here. I hate the Conjuring 3, and I hate it because not because of like the film is bad. The film is bad, but I don't hate it because the film is bad. I hate it because of like the way it like just fucks with like, because like these, I don't know if you're familiar with the Conjuring franchise, Chris. But they're supernatural movies, but they're based on real people and real cases.
Okay.
And the third one is based around a murder that happened where the person claimed that the devil made them do it. And I think that is just to actually like have a film where like the devil made this person murder another human being whose family are still alive is so fucking tasteless.
Mm.
Like I wouldn't give a shit if this was like a fictional film or whatever, but the fact that they're like the filmmakers are saying that the devil made the person, it wasn't the person's fault that they murdered their family member and friend. It was the devil. They made them do it. Look, this movie says so. It's just so sick to me. So
Yeah,
that's
and I
why I
think
hate the movie.
yeah, and I mean with Juan, at least with the decisions he made, it was let's take these supernatural, most likely hoaxes, and say what if they were real, which doesn't really offend anyone. It's not going to hurt anyone. It's just, hey, this is kind of fun. What if the Warrens were not full of shit?
Yeah, which is fine for the first two movies because they are basically just haunted house movies. The first
Yeah,
two, they're just haunted house movies. There's no stakes really with them, in terms of like, yeah, the people and the cases, these are based on real people's lives and the things that they reported to have been true. But nobody died. There's no trials at hand here. They're just haunted house movies, which is perfectly fine. But The Conjuring Tree is just, it's like, no, fuck that movie.
yeah, and I feel like that was a big reason. Like, I mean, I'm sure Juan stepped down because he didn't want to. He's never done 3 in one series, so that may be part of it. But I mean, I don't know. I think that may have been part of why he left because it doesn't really fit what he would do. It's not the fun he would want to have. Like his Conjuring movies are probably his most serious movies, besides maybe Death Sentence. But like, I don't know. It doesn't seem like something he would necessarily
He
enjoy based on what else he does.
he didn't direct the third one though, I'm pretty sure, right?
No, he
He
didn't.
just
No, he
okay.
his production company did it. He did the first 2, and then he dipped out for the third.
Okay. Fair. Yeah, sorry. This is not a Conjuring podcast, even though I fucking hate the Warrens. They're scam artists, hucksters. Yeah, the first Conjuring movie is pretty good though.
Yeah. But
Um, okay, so what, Zach, um, so that I don't feel like a total asshole here, shitting on your top 100. What, if you were to summarize what makes you keep going back to this movie and kind of where, how it's become very close to you and endearing to you? What is it that you really are drawn to here?
I mean, I guess it's a few different things. Adam touched on a lot of them. There is a lot of, to me, heart in this film. Like you're taking like these really macabre and these really dark subjects, and you're making them in a sense accessible and almost fun in a sense to still be able to talk about these things without saying, let's just make this as depressing and horrible as we can because we're talking about horrible subject matter. I don't know. I always like that in a film. It's one of the things that like attracted me to Freeway. And it feels like just such like a labor of love from a director who really got the freedom to do what he wanted to do. And I just don't think there's really a whole lot else like it. Like I think there's a lot of uniqueness in Running Scared that I don't feel like I can get anywhere else. Yeah, I posed it with Freeway, but those are more like superficial. They're both based on fairy tales. But I wouldn't say they're similar films, like in the sense of what they bring. And I don't think anything quite brings what Running Scared brings.
Okay. I mean, I'm okay with that being the final word. I've been outvoted and I'm okay with that. This is a good movie.
If I can just jump in, just kind of add similarly, like and this stay with me on this point. Okay. I don't want to lose Chris one sentence in. But the reason why I like The Night of the Hunter so much is because it's not just another noir film.
Mm-hmm.
They did something different by going down the element of pairing it with being a fairy tale. And Running Scared does that too. I expected this to just be another mid-2000s shoot 'em up action gangster movie. And it wasn't that at all, because the filmmaker wanted to do something different, wanted to make it memorable, wanted to make it special. So he did those fairy tale elements and made them work like really organically. For me personally, anyway, I don't think anything out here kind of stands out as being like eye rolling or on the nose or dumb or anything like that. I think a lot of the stuff done is just really sort of integrates itself with the rest of the plot really well. So I'm not saying obviously Running Scared is as good as Night of the Hunter, because that's obviously a lie. But I like both films for similar reasons. That's the reason why Night of the Hunter became a film that I started really liking and rewatching, and eventually became one of my favorites of all time. But what initially made it so interesting to me was the fact that the filmmakers did something different with material that has been overdone a ton of times. And Running Scared, I feel, does something similar.
Maybe in time I can see it through the wonderful light that y'all see it in. I hope that's true.
All I can say is that I hated Vertigo when I first saw
it. Sorry?
These are some big comparisons to Running Scared. These are some big, but I get it. And look, maybe this will be rediscovered.
Though, I think Wayne Kramer would be very happy with your words, Adam, because one of his inspirations for the film was Night of the Hunter. Because
oh, really? Okay.
He felt that children weren't put in peril enough, like in films, so he liked that part in Night of the Hunter.
Okay, there we go. Me and Wayne Kramer are buddies, apparently.
Yeah. Well, I guess we should, let's see. Adam, it's your turn, right? So now you get to tell us what we're going to be watching.
Yeah, we're going to be sticking in the action genre. Interestingly enough, for me, I was trying to think of some themes. I didn't want to just pick like, two random films or whatever. I wanted to try and make a theme, and I haven't done a director theme in a while, if ever. Maybe I think the Hitchcock special, I suppose, maybe it was the last time I did a director one. So I was trying to think of some directors that I've never seen any of their films, like some of the bigger ones. And I realized I'd never seen any Michael Mann movies. And I didn't just want to jump in and just like, pick Heat and then one of his other ones. I wanted to try and, find a theme there. And I had remembered I'd recently seen a Reddit post about digital photography in film, and how Michael Mann was one of the pioneers for digital photography in mainstream film. And especially his film Miami Vice. So I said, right, we'll go with Miami Vice. And then I realized that Collateral, which was made earlier, was also made on digital, was in fact the first one he made on digital. So that's what we're going to watch. We're going to watch Collateral, and we're going to watch Miami Vice.
I am very excited.
You guys have probably seen those. I've never have, and I'm sure both of you probably did, because they were very, very big movies when they came out.
No, I haven't seen either one.
Oh, okay, cool. That's going to be fun. And Zach's definitely seen both of them, I'm sure.
Yeah, I will be rewatching Miami Vice because it's been a long time.
Cool. Yeah, I'm looking forward to those anyway, just to see, what the photography looks like. Especially, I've heard Miami Vice apparently looks very unique, with the digital. So I'm looking forward to those in terms of streaming. If you're listening and you want to watch along, I believe you guys might just want to double check this. I believe in the US it is streamed. Both are streaming on Netflix. You guys might want to double check that. They are? Okay, cool. If you're like me and you're in region B, these films are slightly harder to see. You can obviously rent them from iTunes and stuff, but you have to have more niche streaming services. If I remember correctly, Miami Vice is on Lionsgate Plus, which is basically Stars. Another way you guys have Stars in the US. It's called Lionsgate Plus here. So it's on that. And then Collateral is on Paramount Plus, which I think you guys have Paramount Plus as well. It's not called something different.
Yeah, it's Paramount.
Yeah, so if you're like me in Region B, you can see them there or like rent them in iTunes and stuff. If you're in the US, which most of our listeners are, both of these films are streaming on Netflix. So if you want to rewatch them in time for our next episode in a couple of weeks, you can go find them there. This is not a paid promotion. I should probably say that so we don't get in trouble. This is not a paid promotion. Netflix don't pay me money, but it'd be nice if they did.
The only other thing I'll just say in closing is if anybody can listen to the recent episode that just went up with Celeste Delacabra, it has been getting some good buzz on Twitter, and on some of the discords I'm in from sort of the queer community to get representation like that. Celeste is a very thoughtful, interesting person, and the episode was one that I really enjoyed and meant a lot to me that they were willing to come on and talk. And so I would love for as many people as possible to go back and hear that and support Celeste and what they're doing. It was a good one for me.